Hello, everyone, and welcome into episode 98 of the Stomp the Bus Show. I'm your host, Mark Harris, coming at you solo for this episode. Colton had some other things he had to attend to. We'll get him on the next episode, so no big issue there. Incredible to come on this episode after an ASU win. I mean, it didn't always look like it was going to happen, so I'll get into it as we go along. Just an incredible win for the program, and just getting to 4-1 is monumental. Before we dive into it, please like and subscribe on YouTube, rate and review on your podcast platform of choice, and follow the College Huddle. You can find their website at thecollegehuddle.com or follow College Huddle on Twitter/X. All right. That was a doozy of a game against Kansas. And boy, you knew that Kansas was going to put up a fight, just having their backs against the wall this whole season with so many close losses, and they did in this game. Credit to Jalen Daniels. He made a few pretty good throws. Had a few that could have been picked off by ASU, but that's a different story. Their wide receiver Skinner, he played pretty well. There's no way to go, there's no way around it. He had a really good game. Let me pull up the box score real quick. Devin Neal, 14 carries for 71 yards and a touchdown. Kansas, they played a good game. And they also got, pretty much all the breaks in this game. ASU committed 2 turnovers, one of which was an unforced error by Kansas. And maybe you could say it was because the guy was closing in on him and that's why Tyson dropped it. But okay. I mean, two turnovers. Kansas did not commit any, even though Keyshawn Elliott dropped a pick and there was a ball that Rouser maybe could have caught that was a bit overthrown. But that's the way it went. ASU missed a kick or got the kick blocked. A lot of refereeing moments did not go ASU's way, and it goes beyond the targeting calls. The first targeting call on Keyshawn Elliott in the third quarter, that was a really halfway call, but I don't blame Keyshawn Elliott for that one. That was not an errant play by him. And even though he did get kicked out, that was a play on that hit. Even if it was targeting, it took 4 points off the board because Kansas only scored a field goal after that. And that ended up being the difference in the game. So it's going to be tough to not have Keyshawn Elliott for the first half against Utah. There's no way around it. He's arguably ASU's best defensive player. But that was a play that needed to be made. And I don't want to say it was a game-winning play, but it was a kind of a crucial play in this game. Now, it should have just been an incompletion, and Kansas shouldn't have gotten a chance, but it is what it is. And then the one on Smith, I've seen some ASU fans defend it. He shouldn't have hit him. He shouldn't have hit Daniels the way he did. And Clayton Smith has been incredible this year. I don't want to dive in. He's been awesome. He had a sack in this game. His catch on the fake punt, he was great. I have nothing but that in that play. I don't really have too big of an issue with the officials in that play. I could see why their coach was so upset. It was also a weird play in terms of was it blown dead? Did he hear that the play was blown dead? All this stuff. So that was a tough play, but thankfully in the end, it didn't cost ASU. The 2 penalties I was a little bit more upset about. There was a third quarter Keith Abney pass interference that led to a Kansas conversion on 3rd and long, and the ball was uncatchable. That was bad. And then on the second Kansas touchdown pass, the second touchdown of Kansas, where it was a wide open Skinner, Elijah O'Neal was coming up the middle and it just got held. And so why I say all of that is to illustrate that things did not go – the ball did not bounce ASU's way. And that's not even – there was a DeCarlos Brooks drop on the drive that was right before the missed field goal. And by the way, that drop would have at least been a first down, potentially more. and Guillory dropped the ball later. I don't think that one actually wound up mattering. So things did not go ASU's way, and they still won. And they rushed for 313 yards, over 7 yards a carry. It says 6.9 yards per carry. Maybe they corrected it to, because I see 309 yards on the ESPN box score, but whatever, it's just it's incredible to see how well the offense did in this game. I mean, aside from 2 drives, they just moved the ball up and down the field at will. I mean, let's go through the drive chart, right? Like, the first drive was incredible. I actually was driving back from somewhere, and so I actually didn't see the first drive. But it is nice to just look on your phone when your team's playing and just see them up 7-0 from the jump, right? Like, no one's upset about that. Kansas touchdown, and then you have 2 bad series. Leavitt runs and then incomplete pass. So tough there, but you force a punt right away, and then you force a punt again. Then they go at 14. This early part in the second quarter, like, that long touchdown drive, the missed field goal. They get a punt right after. Let's see, false start. Sam Leavitt pass incomplete. That was the 1-2 Brooks, and that was a really tough drop. That was a really well designed play. But I mean, the touchdown drive at the end of the half, there was a minute 18 left, right? I mean, you get some penalties, incomplete, like 2 holdings on Kansas, and then oh my gosh, the Shimon Mateer touchdown pass. I mean, that was a play calling thing of beauty. Marcus Arroyo has had his ups and downs this year. The touchdown pass to Shimon Mateer at the end of the first half was just an excellent in so many ways, because it was the exact right part of the field, right sequence in the game, but particularly the part of the field they're on, like the 20. You just have Leavitt roll out a bit. You have Mateer stay in to block for a beat or two. Then he just leaks out in the flat, and there he is, wide open. Leavitt delivers a good pass. Mateer's in, easy peasy. I mean, that was just such a great play. And, in the second half, they didn't really need to do a bunch of exotic stuff. They did have Leavitt pitch to a guy on a run. I don't know how much we need to do that. I think we can run if we're running the ball pretty well already, right? Like, this was clearly a game where Cam Skattebo just knew he was going to get yards. The offensive line was creating holes. Sam Leavitt rushed for 77 yards. They were just running the ball. Well, Rayleigh Brown, great to see Rayleigh Brown get involved and be productive. I'm pretty sure, 77 yards 7 rushes for 41 yards for Rayleigh Brown, 6 yards a carry. I mean, you have to. That's exactly what you're looking for from your secondary back, and it's so good to have him back. You can't just lean on, it's great to see Skattebo just rack up yards. He's currently 6th in the nation in rushing, which is it just kind of goes to my point that he isn't just like some cute story in college football. He's a legit, really good player. And when you're 6th in the country in rushing yards behind only some guys, Ashton Jeanty, who's dude's a freak. I mean, he should be the Heisman winner out of Boise State. I mean, the numbers he puts up, and if you watch any of Ashton Jeanty's highlights, it's like, wow, people just can't tackle him. They bounce off him and then he runs away. It's crazy. But Skattebo's been excellent. And even though he's been excellent, it's still great to have DeCarlos Brooks and Rayleigh Brown step up in this game. On that last touchdown drive, look, 2:04 left. It immediately starts with a 9-yard Rayleigh Brown run to the 34. All of a sudden, the drive just gets so much easier because Rayleigh Brown does a good job, picks up 9 yards. Like, you love that. And then, I guess like people are saying, oh, Sam Leavitt led a touchdown drive at the end of the game. It's like he kind of did, right? Like he threw the touchdown pass, which was a great play design, great execution, all of that. But I mean, Rayleigh Brown 9-yard run, Cam Skattebo 30-yard, 39-yard run. Skattebo 3-yard run. I mean, Leavitt did pick up 14. He did have some runs in this drive, like the 3rd and 3 on the KU7 run. That was huge. I mean, it's just with Leavitt, like guys just miss him in the open field. He makes guys miss. And it's I don't know. I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough. Oh, whoops! I got this taken off. There we go. People talk about his poise, and I mean, I feel like when people talk about Leavitt, they just don't give enough value to his rushing ability and just all of his mobility, everything that entails, right? His pocket presence, his ability to just juke guys out, and it's not and his ability to run away from people. It's not that he can do a few things, right? Like for as much as I love Skattebo, he's not running away from most defensive backs, right? Like there's his longest run of the year is a 39-yard run, right? That's I'm looking at the other G&T's long 77. Taj Brooks from Texas Tech is a 35. So, but he's more of the similar style of runner as Cam Skattebo, so that makes sense, right? Kyle Monongai, Rutgers, 32. No, I didn't mean to click that. My word. Anyway, Caleb Johnson at Iowa, 64. Le'Veon Moss, who's 7th in rushing at Texas A&M, 75-yard run. So, he is a guy he's not the fastest guy out there, but it doesn't matter because of how good he is in every aspect of his game. Where how many quarterbacks in the Big 12 are definitively faster than Sam Leavitt? Fafita, no. Shador, no. Cam Rising, no. Retzlaff, no. Avery Johnson probably is at Kansas State. Becht, no. Garrett Green, I don't think so. KJ Jefferson is a good runner at UCF, but not faster than Leavitt. Sorsby at Cincinnati, no. I don't think the guy at Houston is. No, not TCU. Definitely not Alan Bowman. Jalen Daniels is a good runner, and he had a really good touchdown run in this game. I feel like if him and Sam Leavitt did a 100-yard dash, Sam Leavitt would win. Baylor's made a quarterback change, so maybe DeQuan Finn is. But you get my point. This is a real, he is a real running threat. And because his passing, it feels weird to say it after this game, because he was incredible in this game throwing the ball. It didn't really make a mistake at all. The pick wasn't on him. His touchdown pass to Guillory was exquisite. His first touchdown pass to Jordan Tyson was right where it needed to be. And his 4th touchdown pass of the game, which went to Tyson, was exactly where it needed to be as well. So I don't mean to say this as a criticism of his passing, but he does overthrow the ball at times. So sometimes when I just see him roll out, I'm just run, just run, Sam Leavitt. You can get 10 yards anytime. It's really impressive. And he can go for more, like he showed in the Texas State game and against Mississippi State. It's easy to, drill it down in the film room and be like, hey, you gotta be ready for him to run. But some of these linebackers and defensive linemen, they can't handle him in the open field. And, this Utah defense will almost certainly be the best defense ASU plays this year. Maybe at Kansas State. And you know what? Arizona's defense is pretty good. As much as I love making fun of Arizona, and their loss this weekend was exquisite. It was so fun to watch. It just made my night. seeing them lose to Texas Tech. But it is clear that their offense or their defense is like pretty good. I mean, they went up to Utah and just totally beat them. And in the game against Kansas State that they lost, there was a special teams return in there, and their offense was horrible. So but anyway, you get the point. Like against Utah, this will be one of the better defenses ASU faces. But like all the rest of the defenses they're going to face, save for Kansas State and Arizona, are they meaningfully better than Kansas and Texas Tech and Texas State? Like I don't think so. Like after what we saw from Oklahoma State this past weekend, getting torched by West Virginia, UCF's defense is terrible. BYU's defense, I think Leavitt will be able to pick up yard. Like, but my point is like he's going to be able to keep doing this, right? He's not facing, I would say Alabama, but they just got torched. I'll just go with Georgia. Like Georgia's linebackers or Ohio State's linebackers, they don't play those teams. So he's just going to keep being able to run. And I know that it's important for his passing to grow. I just his rushing ability just extends drives. It puts so much stress on the defense. He has real athleticism. That's what I talked about this whole summer. I just saw one run in the spring game, and he just the way he pulled away was so encouraging, and you see it translate on Saturdays. And I mean, in that final drive, his last run, it's not like he it was a clear run, but like he has natural instincts. Like he's able to like stretch the ball out, and he's tall, so like he's falling forward. I imagine they can incorporate the read option, and especially with Skattebo and Rayleigh Brown and DeCarlos Brooks, like sure, like they worry about Sam Leavitt, but there's going to be a game where Skattebo's dominant. I already know this is going to happen. Like there's going to be a game where Skattebo's running well, and they just call the perfect timing of the read option, and Leavitt keeps it and just pulls away from guys. Like, I mean, I think Leavitt has a longer right. Yeah, Leavitt has the longest run on this team, other than because I don't think anyone had a crazy long run against Wyoming. I think. I think the Leavitt 40-yard run against Texas State is actually the longest of anyone on this team this year, even though, there's Skattebo. So, like, it's just I'm just so encouraged by his rushing ability. And I know people aren't leading with that, but it is just it makes everything easier. And his pocket presence is really good too. He wasn't under too much duress against Kansas. I think the offensive line probably had their best, I don't know, one of their better games of the season. And from a pass blocking perspective, the O-line has been pretty solid this whole year. Yeah, there were a few bad moments at Texas State. They gave up a bad sack early against Texas Tech, but from there they kind of settled down, and Leavitt didn't get sacked in this last game, and I think he got sacked once against Texas Tech, right? So that's 2 games of allowing 1 sack. You'll take that, obviously. That's going to change this weekend. Like, Utah's going to get to him a few times, and they'll pressure. Like, I'm not blind to think that, they're going to run over Utah now. No. But considering the biggest issue with this team last year was just the offensive line being a disaster and being extremely injury prone, it's nice to go into games not having to worry about it as much. And, Trenton Bourguet obviously doesn't have the same mobility as Leavitt as well. So I think that's another thing. That's another thing to consider. So talking about Leavitt's passing in this game, I was listening to the Sun Devil Source podcast, and Chris Cartman made a very good point that Leavitt really hasn't really thrown any Jeopardy balls this year. Maybe 1 or 2, but his 3 interceptions, it's been 2 overthrows to guys that like it made sense. The decision was right. He just overthrew it a bit, goes up or whatever. That's what happens when you overthrow, right? That's his biggest weakness. And then the one to Tyson, that was just off his hands. That maybe was a slight overthrow, but that's the one a receiver has to catch. And so that's really encouraging to see. And then, his touch just looks so much better in this game than it had in the previous ones, right? I mean, The one to Giller was great. The one to Jordan Tyson, the throw that should have been the game winner for ASU if its defense. I was pretty unimpressed with ASU's defense in this game, I got to say. And they did have some calls go against them, but like I mentioned, the Keith Abney pass interference that was BS. It was BS, but then Kansas scored 2 plays later on 2 runs, and the one that they scored on was just bad defense. He was just way too clean of a runner. Like he didn't even get hit. So that has to change. And I don't know how much it's going to change without Keyshawn Elliott and Clayton Smith for the first half of this game. Like that worries me. And it probably had an impact on them scoring so easily in the second half, right? Like that can't be overstated. That's like, I don't think ASU's defense is going to continue to be that level of bad. Like it wasn't at Texas Tech, right? Like even though they had a few bad drives early on, they were able to, clamp them down and hold them to field goals for the rest of the game. Like if ASU just transferred that specific defensive effort from Texas Tech to this game against Kansas, they would have won, 35-24, right? Or something like that, like 35-27. So, but whatever. It's water in the bridge. They win. And they did it with basically the bounce of the ball and refereeing going against them. And I don't want to bring up the refereeing too much. Like it's been talked about ad nauseum. Chris Cartman has done a lot of good stuff on his Twitter account that kind of details it. But it did play a factor. It wasn't something that like had no impact on the game. It wasn't the main thing. Probably the turnovers and the missed kick were the biggest reasons that Kansas was able to hang around in this game. But I can't say that the refereeing played zero impact either. So that's kind of the end of it. But I saw a lot of people on social media being like, "Oh, I thought we escaped, the Pac-12, and now we're still dealing with Pac-12 refs." It's like, yeah, I'm not surprised by that. Like that was always going to happen. If you had followed the Big 12, it's not like they had these fantastic refs, like, and it's a lot of the same guys who called Pac-12 games are now doing the Big 12 games because there's more Big 12 games now. And so therefore they need refs who have experience. You get them from the Pac-12. There you go. So like, I think this is just something that's going to be, I don't know, a theme in the Big 12. I don't think we're going to escape it. And hopefully ASU wins a game because of bad refereeing, right? Like usually it does even out over the course of a season. So I can't think of anything off the top of my head that ASU is like, "Oh, we really got away." Oh, well, here's one in the Texas State game with Miles Rouser not getting ejected for targeting. Like I don't know how Miles Rouser didn't get ejected for targeting at Texas State and Keyshawn Elliott does. That bothers me, but you can always get mad about the inconsistencies with targeting. You're just going to drive yourself up a wall. Like there's no grand answer at the end of it, right? Like I think it's arbitrary, and sometimes the crown of the helmet is defined differently, and like that's just how it is. So unfortunately, it's hurting ASU for this upcoming game against Utah. But I will say this, like once those guys went out, you're like, okay, like now, like this was already a huge game anyway for ASU. Because if you're 3-2, your chances of getting to a bowl game are still real, but it's a lot more of a coin flippy thing. Now that you are 4-1, and I'm going to be honest, like ASU's wins have not held up quite as much as we'd hoped. Wyoming has not been good. Mississippi State, probably the worst team in the SEC. It's certainly not Vanderbilt, right? I mean, maybe Auburn. I think Mississippi State will play Auburn. So, like, who knows how Mississippi State looks at the end of the year, but they're not good. That's for sure. Texas State looks like a good group of 5 team, but they ended up losing to Sam Houston. I don't know if it was last week or not. So, but anyway, like they're not going to be a playoff contender, right? They're probably going to go like 9-3, which that's still a good win for ASU, but it's not like, oh wow, we handed Boise State their only loss of the year, and now they're in the playoff, right? Like, And then Texas Tech, I think that loss is holding up better, at least, right? Like in the moment, I think the thing that is just what people need to learn about college football is just like a team in week 1 is not necessarily the same team in week 4 or 5, right? Like guys improve. Texas Tech did not have Taj Brooks at Washington State. I think that's key to remember. That's probably a reason why they lost. And then the Abilene Christian, that was anyway. Like my point is, Texas Tech is clearly better than we thought they were when we played them, because they're now 3-0, leading the conference. Texas Tech is not like a juggernaut or anything. Like they could have easily lost all 3 of the games that they won, but they won them, and whatever. So, and then this game against Kansas, I don't know. This was just it's weird. This was a frustrating win. Does that make sense? Because just through the course of the game, I always kind of thought, no, I didn't always think ASU was going to win. In the second half, it felt like ASU was going to win with the way that they were moving the ball. And they were moving the ball very well in the first half too, running the ball at will basically in the first half. That's what made it frustrating. Is like ASU is doing things right offensively. Like they are just marching down the field. Leavitt looks good. He looks in control. Oh, but there's a turnover. Oh, Jordan Tyson catches the ball for a first down. Could have just gone down, tries to make a move, fumbles it. Some turnovers and fumbles I can kind of accept. Like if it's a quarterback at the end of a game and you need a touchdown and you haul it in there in the end zone, it gets picked off. It's like, okay, well, I'd rather you do that than this dink and dunk your way down the field so your completion percentage looks better and you don't have an int on your stat line. So like not all interceptions are created the same, right? In the same way that not all fumbles are created the same. For example, in the Cowboys-Steelers game on Sunday night, the guy for the Cowboys just gets popped at the goal line. Ball pops out, bounce the ball, right? Dak recovers it, and they go on to win the game later. Even though, obviously, you have to hold on to the ball, it's important to not fumble. If you're getting, someone coming right at you and the ball pops out and it's a perfect hit, like it is more excusable than Jordan Tyson like backpedaling with the ball flying, not in the most tight position and it gets fumbled, right? Or even in, Tetero McMillan fumbling for Arizona, that was not as good of a fumble either, right? Like, so, I mean, both of those turnovers were like, whew, like I'm very happy for Jordan Tyson that he had 2 touchdowns in this game and totally redeemed himself. Like the first touchdown he had, he just cooked his guy at the line of scrimmage. Like Leavitt didn't need to make some awesome throw. He just had to put it in a general area and have Tyson go get it. And I love that. I mean, this is, I think this was mentioned after the game. Like Dillingham was saying to Tyson, like, hey, like we need you. Like, and you know what? Like, that's the mindset of this. Like as fans, we can bitch about stuff and complain and go on Twitter and be like, what's going on and all this. Like it's part of it. But as a coach, as a player, like you just need to one play at a time, get over it, move on to the next one. Right. Like, and even for those 2 turnovers, it was still a 14-all game at half. And there you go. So yeah, just really impressed by the run game in this one, and of course Sam Leavitt's throwing as well. Like I don't know if I've ever been more impressed with a quarterback who didn't even throw for 160 yards, but you just watched the game and it was like, oh yeah, this guy is dealing. And he had a huge 3rd and 18 completion to Tyson on a play that had he had picked it up the play before by running it, and then there was offsetting penalties, so they had to redo the down. He just chucks it right to Tyson on I think it was a post route towards the from the left side, and it was just right on the money, right in stride. Like that is, I don't think Leavitt makes that throw a month ago, right? I don't think he makes that throw 3 weeks ago, and this is something I mentioned on the last show, but just Leavitt being, 19 years old, having 2 full weeks in between games, like that. I think we just saw like him, like that was easily the best game he's played. And you saw just him look better. You saw him look more poised, more in control, and less, frenetic and throwing the ball over the place, right? Like leaving the Mississippi State game, the thing in the back of your head was like, oh, like, Leavitt, he missed some throws in that game. And while I think if Jake Smith catches a touchdown pass against Texas Tech, I think Leavitt's game looks a little bit different. But Leavitt did not have a fantastic game against the Red Raiders, right? Like he's still a work in progress, but this was a fantastic step to see. And you can tell that the bye week and the practice that came with it influenced his play for the better, right? Like he just looks so much more in control. And especially, I try not to get too long-term with these guys. Like it's just, in this world of college football, like you just never know, man. You just never know. And so I don't know how long Leavitt's going to be here. But after watching the post-game interview with him and Dillingham, it seems like Leavitt is like, yeah, I want to stick with this guy. I'm just going to stick with him. And you can tell they have a good rapport. I think Leavitt sees being with Dillingham as like, yeah, like this guy's going to help me develop. And this guy can turn me into someone who plays like Bo Nix. And, I think people look, like I'm a Washington Husky fan. Like I'll make some Bo Nix jokes here and there, but like he was a good college quarterback at Oregon. He was really good. And he's played decently well for the Broncos, right? They're 3-2, not necessarily all because of Bo Nix. I get it. Like, but he's mobile. He makes, smart decisions. Like if you're a Broncos fan, you have to feel this is probably the best you've felt since maybe that weird Trevor Siemian start a few years, like the year after they won the Super Bowl, right? Like this is probably the best you felt as a Broncos fan in terms of like the future and, like I think we might have at least a decent quarterback, right? Bo Nix may never be but the point is he was a good player. And if you're Sam Leavitt, you would be like, oh, I would like to be Bo Nix, right? And if, Dillingham worked with Bo Nix at Oregon and at Auburn. So, and they have like Bo Nix was a good runner. Bo Nix, he obviously a 5-star quarterback, had good attributes. When you watch Leavitt, like it's not like you're looking at him and like, oh, he's physically limited here. I don't see it. I don't see him I don't see his physical limitations at all. I don't he's running past guys. He's juking, he's making guys miss in the open field. And sure, he'll overthrow some guys sometimes, but it looks like that is less of an issue than it would be. An incredibly tough challenge. And I don't think many ASU fans are going into this game like, oh, we're definitely going to win. But after seeing how they played on a down-to-down basis against Kansas, a Kansas team that probably has a better offense than Utah, right? There's still no word if Cam Rising is going to play. I take that to mean he's not going to play. I don't expect Cam Rising to play. And even if he does play, at least from a throwing perspective, he's going to be rusty, right? He's not going to be too rusty athletically because he has played this year, and the injury that he suffered is a throwing, it's a throwing hand injury. He's not really injured in his day-to-day life even. Some football injuries, obviously, like it's a broken leg or what have you, like something that really obviously you can't function even as a normal person, right, in society. With a broken finger, you can get by, but as a quarterback throwing a ball, obviously, different. So athletically, I don't know how rusty Cam Rising would be, but throwing the ball, maybe he'll miss a few throws early on, and who knows, maybe that ends up being the difference in a game if it's a close game, right? So anyway, I say that to say I can now go into this Utah game after just how well ASU played on offense, right? I keep coming back ASU probably should have won this game. Let's just say Kansas has all the offensive success that it did because ASU's defense did not play that well in this game. I can't really defend it too much. It it was weird with ASU's defense. It felt like they either gave up like an 80-yard touchdown drive or they forced a 3-and-out or like a first down and then a 3-and-out. Like it was no in between. So it wasn't a terrible defensive game, but it's either this one or at Texas State. I mean, just in terms of points allowed, it was worse. In the moment, it felt worse. And because some of these defensive games, like in the game against Texas State, they got jumped on early, like clearly. Like GJ Kinney had some plays ready to go, some well-timed screen calls, fourth down calls that worked. And then they adjusted. And then they held Texas State to one touchdown for the rest of the game, and that was it. This was different. This was 2 touchdowns early, and then they limited Kansas in the second quarter, limit them a little bit in the fourth quarter, and then Kansas scores 2 strong drives in the fourth quarter. And sure, some of that was because Smith and Elliott were out, but some of it wasn't. Like it was just, not great defense and a really good throw to Skinner from Daniels in the back of the end zone. I can't. There was an argument that maybe that wasn't even a catch. It looked like a catch to me, and it didn't look like there's enough there to overturn it either. So I don't have a huge issue with that one. It was a great catch, like a great throw and catch. I kind of am of the mindset of like, oh, like if they make a great play and it's like borderline, just give it to them, right? Even though obviously had ASU not scored on that last drive, it would have been the difference in the game. But anyway, I do think the defense can just play better against Utah, because I don't know how much Utah is like really trying to run it up. I'm looking at, let's go to Utah's game log, because I don't think they've really scored that much points in any of these games other than their FCS game, which I believe they scored a lot in that one. So Utah's a 6-point favorite. They were 6.5 earlier today. They opened as -3, so people jumped on ASU or on Utah immediately. I get that, honestly. Like, Utah is coming off a bye. It will be a short week for ASU, only by 1 day, but still. And like a lot of the metrics, advanced metrics that I'll show some of them later in the show, they kind of see ASU as like the 50th, 54th best team in the country, and which puts them at like a slightly below average Power 5 team. And like, that's why this win was so important, because now you just need to win 2 more games the rest of the year. And you're more than likely, like, it's probably more likely that you finish 7-5 than it is you finish 6-6. 7-5 feels like the most likely scenario, and that bakes in a Utah loss, right? So anyway, switching it back to Utah. Yeah, okay, so cool. They put up 49 against Southern Utah, 23 against Baylor, 38 against Utah State, 22 against Oklahoma State, 10 against Arizona. So, like, with ASU, if Isaac Wilson is playing, they shouldn't score 30 points in this game. They shouldn't. If they get to 24, I can accept that. But 30 points, you would be the first, you'd be the first, because they've only played, Big 12 teams. You would be the first Big 12 team to allow them to score over 23 points. And, I think ASU's defense, it's not great, but it had played better than it did on Saturday. I think we can say that. And yes, the penalties influenced that as well, as I mentioned on this show. But a lot of them weren't penalties. A lot of them were just players getting beat. So that needs to be better. And I don't think Utah is necessarily built to score 30 points unless they get some special teams stuff, right? Like, so that's something to consider. And especially with how, again, another missed blocked kick, like how underwhelming ASU special teams have been. In the game, it seemed like Carson Kiefer, like, they went in for extra points, but you still would probably rather have Hershey, but then Hershey like low balls kicks sometimes. And so it's just that's a really tough thing for ASU. And again, like that's why I say like it is just so important that you got to that fourth win. Because while I do think ASU is I think 7-5 does feel realistic. There are flaws in this team. Like if not everyone's playing on defense, like the defense is gettable. Keith Abney, who I think he's done an okay job this year, but like he's not like a lockdown corner at this point, despite having a good future. Now, Javen Robinson, I want to give him. He's been such an underrated transfer addition for this team. I mean, because you just never hear his name brought up in the game, right? There aren't many moments where it's like, oh, Javen Robinson. It's like it's either him breaking up a pass or like allowing a 5-yard gain or something. Like he's been pretty good, and that's what you want to see from a corner is not really being brought up that much. So, I another thought I have with this game is I'm kind of glad Utah beat the living snot out of us last year, right? Like from a motivation standpoint, like the players who were on that field don't want to feel like that again. Being a Friday night games are always weird. I think like that's what happened in the Pac-12, just weird Friday night results. It's going to be hot. It's probably going to be like 98 degrees at kickoff, 97. Utah is probably more used to that than we might think. It's been pretty hot in the Salt Lake area. So it's not like they're coming from like Michigan or something. And I think the crowd will be pretty good. I've seen some things on social media that I don't think we can just like expect this to be a sellout. But I think it will be. I think just because it's Utah and ASU looks. I mean, you have to be riding high right now if you're a Sun Devil fan. Like, sure, in the back of your head, like, yeah, it's probably more like we go 6-6 than it is we go 9-3, right? I mean, this team going 5-2 the rest of the way. I just don't think that's going to happen, right? But they can easily go 3-4 the rest of the way, right? That would not be shocking at all. And when you're that caliber of a team, right? It like ASU, a lot of metrics kind of point to them being as like, yeah, they're, about average Power 5 team, maybe a slightly below, but they're a real team. Like it's not, in all of these kind of advanced metrics graphs, ASU just kind of bunched up with a lot of other okay teams. And considering where this program has been recently, it's very good. And I mean, how much better or worse is this team than the 2021 ASU team? Now, the 2021 ASU team was more talented than this team, for sure. There's no doubt about it. But in terms of just how good of a team, in terms of winning games, I think the 2021 team would be favored. The 2021 team clearly had a better defense. But this 2024 team it's crazy to say with Jaden Daniels balling out in the NFL. Like, I have nothing bad to say about Jaden Daniels, but he did not play that well in 2021. And the offense was just clunky. And the penalties, we've talked about this, were abysmal. And so all of those things, it's like how much, if this team goes 8-4, which I don't think it will, but I think it's closer to doing that than anyone thought before they need to go 4-3 the rest of the way. Is that crazy? Like, it's not crazy. You're probably going to if you go 8-4 this year, you're almost certainly going to need to pull a game out of your rear end, figuratively, right? So I don't know if that's going to happen, but this is a winnable game for ASU. That's the thing. This is a winnable game for ASU, and nobody went into this season being like, you know what? When we play Utah, ASU is going to be 4-1, and it's going to be a reasonably winnable game for ASU. No, it was oh man, let's hope this team is 3-2 and you're 3-3 after Utah and go from there, right? So, I mean, I think the thing is with getting to 4-1 is the next games for ASU. Let me pull up the schedule. While we're on the topic, I don't think ASU beats Utah. I think ASU loses this game. I'm going to say 27-20. That's what I have. Colton says ASU loses 28-24, which also feels about right. But, like, okay. I mean, would that really be some – I hate going down this road. Like, this is loser talk, like, admittedly. Like, losing a close game and walking out being like, oh, like, we hung in there with Utah. Like, that is loser talk. It is. So, but again, in the confines of this specific season where the goal is just like, of course you want to win, like winning this game, like ASU is in the top 20 of the AP poll the following week. I bet they would be 5-1. The buzz around, I mean, beating Utah like that, the buzz nationally would be incredible. It would almost certainly take great plays from Leavitt and Skattebo too. So like you add that into it, like those guys would get more hype. That would be great. Like and it's not completely unrealistic either because of the issue that Utah's had offensively, and it's at home. It's going to be hot Friday night. ASU's playing better. All this stuff. Like, of course, it would be incredible if ASU won this game. That would be the best ASU moment. I'll go back to the 2021 season. I think that game where they destroyed UCLA on the road, and they had one loss after that game because they lost to BYU, as we all remember. I don't know if that got them to 4-1 or 5-1 or whatever, but like that was a big win, and that turned out to be their best win of the year. It turned out to be the only winning team that team beat. But at that moment, you're like, oh, I feel good about this team. Like when everything's clicking, like that's what it looked like, and it looked good. That was Jaden Daniels' best game of the year. All of that. That's what that would feel like if beating Utah. It would feel incredible. And it would be such a big step forward for this program, especially after the way it lost last year. And I know that game was so weird because you had like Conover starting and Sean Na'a had to start at left tackle because Isaiah Glass left the team like on the flight there or right before, like all this crap. And it was also right off after your first win of the year. So there's no possible way that guys were going to be as motivated. Once you get that monkey off the bat by beating Wazoo, like it's just human nature that when you're going for the one thing, you finally get that win. It's like, okay, like everything just went against them in that game against Utah. Well, maybe ASU gets some breaks. You're going to need a few breaks to beat Utah, probably, even if Wilson's playing. Like their defense is good. But that's the upside of this game. The downside of this game, unless like Leavitt gets injured or something like horrible like that, that's different. Knock on wood. He's done a pretty good job of avoiding injuries so far, I will say. There haven't really been any scary moments. And he doesn't really take huge hits either. He's taking a few, but not as many as you might think. Anyway, if ASU loses this game, loses it, within 10 points, you look and it's like, okay, we're 4-2 and we hung tough against Utah. We have 6 games to go to win 2 games. Yeah, we can do that. And if you like really compete with Utah, then you'll probably think like, yeah, we can probably go 3-3 the rest of the way, right? At Cincinnati, I know some people like that it's a 9 a.m. kickoff. I freaking hate it. If ASU does beat Utah and then has to go play Cincinnati on the road at 9 a.m. the following weekend, they're absolutely losing to the Bearcats. Absolutely. I could see that coming from 10,000 miles away. You're coming off the biggest win in years over the team that entered the year as the conference favorite, a team that had kicked your ass, a team that has kicked your ass for like 5 years in a row. And then the next game is on the road at Cincinnati at 9 a.m. on ESPN Plus. There's no way ASU's winning that game. There's no freaking way. But anyway, even if you lose the game to Utah, I think the Cincinnati game is more winnable if you lose, just because it's one thing to come off a win. It's another thing to like respond to a loss. I just think there's some human nature aspect of that. And then we got their schedule. Okay. There's a bye in here. Yeah, you have a bye, and then you're at Oklahoma State. That game, it's going to be tough to win at Oklahoma State. I understand that, but that program looks like a tire fire right now. And again, what I said this whole summer is, look, I saw ASU play Oklahoma State last year, and I wasn't really that impressed with Oklahoma State. It took way too long for them to pull away in that game. The year before, when ASU went to Oklahoma State, that was a close game in the fourth quarter at one point, and then Oklahoma State pulled away. And that was a 10-win. Those were better Oklahoma State teams. So anyway, I think getting to 4-1 is so important, because these games, you can go 1-2 in this 3-game stretch. You leave at 5-3 with 2 home games and a middling Arizona team. Like, I look at this schedule and I see the at K-State loss continues to just look extreme, or the at K-State game continues to just look extremely daunting. But I don't know. It's maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse a bit too much. It's just ASU going like 1-6. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 1-6 down the stretch just seems really unlikely. I just don't really see that happening. And more like, I don't want to go into the Territorial Cup at 5 wins. And it's like, oh yeah, like, okay, you get to 6 wins if you win it. I would love to have that 6th win already in the bank by the time you get to the Territorial Cup and you look at the schedule and it's not extremely daunting. It's going to be important. You have 1 road win under your belt. You're going to need 1 more. I don't think you can just be like, oh, we'll just win all our home games. Yeah, and Utah can beat you. BYU can beat you at home. UCF can beat you, So you're going to have to win one of these road games to really get in the bag. But it wasn't inconceivable that they went on the road and beat Texas Tech either. That game, in the how much did we really win by graphic, like ASU was on the positive side of that after that loss. So, and they gave Texas Tech like a 40% chance to win that game on Bill Conley's metrics. So it's not like ASU wasn't like totally dominated in that game. So here, let's look at the ESPN FPI. Again, when you look at this, it makes sense. Texas having the best FPI makes sense. Ohio State being number 2, it makes sense based on how they've played in these games. Even Alabama, sure, they're number 3 after their bad loss to Vanderbilt, but they're clear points, 2.5 full points below Ohio State, which feels right. And then Georgia's below them because Alabama beat Georgia. And then you get to, keep going down, and it's like, maybe if you're a Penn State fan or Oregon fan, you feel jilted by that. But, Oregon could have lost to Boise State, could have lost to Idaho, and Penn State hasn't looked like extremely impressive in all these games. Like, in terms of just how these teams looked, the FPI looks pretty good. So that's why it kind of, I think it's a helpful graphic or a helpful ranking, because it does kind of match the eye test. Like, I'm not upset that Kansas is rated above us. I'm not, because if you look at the way they've played, and like, do I agree? Like, I don't totally agree with them being above us, but their games have all been close losses, right? You can tell when you watch them on Saturday. Gave me a pop-up. Okay. Well, you can tell when you watch Kansas on Saturday, it's not some they can move the ball. They have some key players, right? Like Jalen Daniels, when he's playing well, is a good quarterback. They just have been on the wrong side of all these games. So that's why they're higher up in the FPI than you might think. Anyway, it has ASU as the 53rd team. Okay, I mean, is that crazy? Like, does that really feel crazy? Especially, it's not. There are some Group of 5 teams ahead, right? Like, where's Boise State? Yeah, Boise State is 20th, so they're ahead. Believe UNLV is ahead, and um, James Madison. So there are a few, and so that doesn't make ASU like and Tulane as well. So like there are some um, G5 teams ahead, but it's mostly Power 5 teams, and gives ASU a chance to go. Its most likely record is set 7.1 and 4.9. They're pretty much saying, yeah, ASU's probably going to go 7-5. Probably going to go 7-5. This graph, this column right here is percent to get to 6 wins. Gives ASU. Oh, where are we? Sorry, I always go down. Okay, gives ASU 86% to get to 6 wins. Again, feels very possible. Like again, like it does show that ASU's 4-1 record is a little inflated, but it also illustrates that, like, yeah, your record's a little bit inflated, but we still think you're going to win 3 more games. And so, like, the previous wins that you had still count, So that's why I'm not like. Sometimes you see this when an ASU team gets to this part of the season and they have one loss, and fans are like, they need to be ranked. ASU needs to be ranked. I didn't really see a lot of that after this Kansas game, and deservedly so. ASU is not a team that deserves to be ranked in the top 25, but that's okay. That is okay. And if they beat Utah, then they will be, But it's just all saying, like, this program is overall doing pretty well for year 2. 7-5 feels like the most likely outcome for the season. And that would, by the way, include going 3-4 in the Big 12, right? Like, it's not like you're squinting your eyes and be like, oh, we need to win in every close game. Like, no, this is baking in. You're going to lose a few close games, right? But you're probably going to win a few, and you get to 7-5. And again, when we did this show before the year, it felt like 7-5 was the ceiling of this team. And now 7-5 does not feel like the ceiling. The ceiling feels like 9-3, which I don't think that's going to happen. But, if you really get some bounces of the ball that go your way, whatever, quarterback throws some picks, you catch a team sleeping, all that, like, you could go 9-3. But that's how it's shifted. You've just watched the team and be like, oh, they're not bad. They're just not a bad team. They're not a great team, but they're not a bad team. And they've already beaten one of the teams ahead of them, right? And they probably should have won that game by even more. Texas Tech, not really that much ahead of them. Arizona below. You play. Where's Cincinnati? Oh, Cincinnati's just ahead. Okay, you can beat them. I think Oklahoma State's way higher on this list than they should be. Oklahoma State looks pretty bad. Why can't I find them? Okay, Oklahoma State's right. See, look, these teams, like, you can beat these teams. You already did beat one of them. You could have. It's not like you got blown out by Texas Tech, right? Like, the only teams that are like way higher above on this are Kansas State. And again, no one's expecting you to beat Kansas State, but even Utah. So on ESPN FPI, for those listening on the podcast, Utah's ranked 40th. Okay, ASU's ranked 52nd. There's a Utah's 6.4 on their rating. ASU is 4.8. Not really that big of a difference. They're just kind of grouped in with all these mid-level teams. And that is a clear step forward this year for ASU. I know Mississippi State is down there. Yeah, but Mississippi State, Purdue, that's the one. Because Purdue is, now that Houston won, Purdue has separated itself as the clear worst Power 5 team. Yeah, holy cow. Purdue is below Colorado State, Charlotte. Jeez. Whew. Yeah, and Wyoming, oh my gosh, minus 15.7. They're 122nd. It is annoying that, like, on one hand, it's great that you caught Wyoming on one of its worst years, but it also was annoying. Like, it would have been nice if Wyoming was able to be like a typical, like, ugly 6-6 Wyoming team, but oh well. You got to take the wins. So I wanted to show a few other things from the podcast Twitter page. Not great hosting, but come on. Oh, no, it's going to stop sharing. That's not what I wanted to do. Back to present, share screen. Yes. X page. Okay. Down. Well, Malik McClain taking a year off to preserve his red shirt, or taking a red shirt year to preserve his eligibility. This makes sense. I mean, yeah, it impacts ASU's wide receiver depth a little bit, but I can't he didn't make that much of an impact. So what depth are you really what are you really losing? He'll be better next year, right? So I like that. Whittingham saying, this is a quote from Josh Furlong of KSL. Whittingham said Cam Rising will play once he gets the go-ahead from the medical staff. He said, quote, we'll see what happens this week, but there's a chance. Whew, glad I'm not a Utah fan right now. This would be so frustrating. Sam Leavitt won some awards. Leavitt, Skattebo, and Max Ianacher at right tackle has done a good job this year. All were on the Big 12 PFF College Team of the Week. You love to see that. Sam Leavitt, Newcomer of the Week. Skattebo, Co-Offensive Player of the Week, along with Taj Brooks. Here we go. This is what I'm looking for. The Did We Really Get Beat That Bad chart from Parker Fleming, Stats of War. Great resource for this show. It just explains how, on a per-play basis, how teams played. Has ASU right up there next to Georgia. Right next to Georgia beating Auburn and Indiana blowing out Northwestern. So I think there is it won't probably be this game against Utah, but I think there will be a game in the Big 12 this year where ASU beats a team. Things just go right, and ASU beats a team by 14 points, and people don't really see it coming. I think that's coming down the tracks. Just in terms of how they've played, I think the closest ASU was in this chart might have actually been the Texas State game. So, and then this is Bud Davis. This is opponent adjusted EPA per play. For those listening, ASU is in the top right corner of the graph where you want to be. It is right next to Texas Tech. It is right next to USC. It is significantly better on offense than Utah. Utah is a bottom 3 offensive team based on Power 5, only ahead of Purdue and Northwestern. ASU's right in the same boat as Pitt, 5-0 Pitt team, an A&M team that's playing better. The only teams that are really fully ahead of ASU in this opponent adjusted EPA per play are like the powers, right? Like Alabama, Oregon, Iowa State, who clearly looks like the best team in the Big 12 right now, just based on you have 2 20-point conference wins. Those are great. Indiana's been a great story. Kansas State, like all the teams that just clearly look solid. They don't quite have as many weaknesses. They're in the furthermore in the top right of the graph. And ASU is in the top right of the graph, but not, more in the middle of it, right? So a lot of these Big 12s are in the meaty middle, other than Kansas State and Iowa State. Colorado, another 4-1 team. BYU, 5-0 team. West Virginia's at the bottom side of that. Arizona's on the bottom left quadrant of this graph. Oklahoma State is in the bottom left quadrant of this graph, and even further so than Arizona, right? Like I can't see Cincinnati in there. I don't know where they're in the bottom right. So their offense has been better than people expected, but their defense has been worse. ASU has been, of Power 5 teams, their defense and offense have been a little bit better than the average Power 5 team based on opponent adjusted EPA per play. So like the advanced stats are saying this is a pretty decent, it's like an okay team, okay Power 5 team. I know I've repeated that a bunch, but yeah. So, all right, that's enough football. I want to touch on ASU hockey. They split a road series up at oh my gosh, almost got a Fort Collins, Colorado Springs against Air Force. Killed them in the first game, like won 8-1, and then lost in overtime the next game. That's a tough one. That might be a loss that comes back to hurt them because being in the NCHC, like it's a more difficult conference. You'll get more wiggle room for your losses, right? As we talked about with Big 12 men's basketball, but still, like these losing a road game to Air Force is not mixed in with that. So that was tough. I am excited to see the turnout for ASU versus Michigan, both games. There is a 3:30 game that's right before the football game. I won't be able to go. There'll be a lot of people there. I recommend going. Mullet is a great arena. It's a great college hockey atmosphere. And it'll be a big deal with, a program like Michigan hockey in town, sent a bunch of guys to the NHL. And then I also want to shout out ASU volleyball. So ASU volleyball is 14-2 on the season. It hosts Arizona on Wednesday night, that being Wednesday the 9th. So if you can head down to Tempe and go there, do that. Their one loss is at Nebraska. It was like a power in the sport. You can forgive that. And then they've lost to Baylor on September 27th. But they have since beaten in the Big 12 play, they've beat a ranked TCU team, lost at 19 Baylor. Okay, so their two losses are on the road to good teams, and they have one ranked series win under their belt against TCU. They beat Utah at home and beat then number 20 BYU at home 3-0. So they're 14-2 entering a set against Arizona. Don't see a bunch of ranked teams left on the schedule. Just a really good program that JJ Van Niel has built. I mean, I think volleyball is just a really fun sport to watch. It makes so much sense why, there's a lot of talk about women's basketball really growing, but women's volleyball it's kind of the next one, the next women's sport that's really growing in popularity. I think there's like a new league, and it looks good on TV too. It just, the action is there. It's just fun to watch, and JJ Van Niel's done a really good job. One of the better coaches in ASU athletics right now. So good to see that. Don't have a lot of men's basketball thoughts. It was tough to see Tuwande Yusufu go to Baylor. Colton and I obviously talk about it. It feels like we're just getting these high-end recruits that wasn't going to last forever, but ASU even being in the mix is good enough. And then, you're not going to get every high-end player. So, all right, that wraps it up. I have ASU losing to Utah 27-20. Colton has them losing 28-24. If this game is – I think ASU just needs to hold on in the first half without Smith and Elliott. Again, another reason why that win over Kansas was just so big. And I think this is a really good test for ASU at a good time in the season. I think ASU, Justin Watley on the defensive line is a potential absence, but it didn't seem like they suffered too many injuries in the game against Kansas either. So we'll find out more as that game gets closer to kickoff. But it feels like you can go into this game as an ASU fan and talk yourself into like, yeah, we could win this game. If things go right for us, if we hit on a few big plays, if Utah's offense doesn't look very functional, like this is not totally, a crazy thing. And so that's a good place for this program to be. It really is. And it's nice that it's all just about wins and losses now, especially with some of the stuff, the final chapter officially closing on the previous regime's infractions. It's just nice that it's put to bed, and now ASU is a 4-1 team, kind of just in the midst of a very generic ASU football season. And some years that isn't so fun when you have expectations of competing for the conference championship or something. But after what the fan base and the team and the program has been through in the last 3-ish years, it's good to just be 4-1. Maybe we beat Utah, maybe we don't. It just looks like this is just a solid team, and I'm appreciating that aspect of it. Now, it all almost came falling apart against Kansas, but it didn't. ASU won, and there we go. So there's a realistic chance. There's like a 40% chance the next time Colton and I are recording an episode, ASU is 5-1 and ranked. And that's awesome. It's not crazy for anyone to predict ASU wins this game, even though they are underdogs, obviously. All right. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. And as always, follow the College Huddle. Go Devils, baby.